10 failed WWE wrestlers from famous families. Number 1. Sha Guerrero. Eddie Guerrero is a legend. The former WWE champion is celebrated as one of the best wrestlers to ever step into a ring. Eddie had it all: charisma, strong mic skills, and was a tremendous worker. Given Eddie Guerrero's pedigree, it would be hard for anyone to step into the spotlight under the Guerrero name. However, Sha seemed to take up the task when she joined FCW in 2010. The second-gen star displayed remnants of her late father throughout her time in the developmental promotion. Sha even won the Queen of the FCW in 2011, so what exactly happened? When WWE made the transition into NXT, the second-gen star didn't make the transition very well. However, it didn't particularly have anything to do with her skills, as it was a personal issue. Sha was struggling with an eating disorder. She revealed during an interview that Joey Mercury noticed something wrong and she was sent to rehab for a 2-month stint. Thankfully, Sha got better, but she didn't know how to readjust into the WWE fold without falling back into her old habits. She was officially released from the promotion in 2014, and she's made some wrestling appearances here and there, but the former WWE star made a statement in 2021 that she could no longer participate in professional wrestling. Official today, I'm withdrawing from all performances and appearances scheduled in conjunction with wrestling. After a very scary mental illness crisis, I'm no longer advised by loved ones and professionals to participate in high-stress events at this time. I deeply apologize to the fans who have been respectful and supportive of me and who continue to do so. I'll be using this time to seek the help I need, re-establish my eating disorder treatment, and hopefully get answers and solutions to reach a healthy mental state. I apologize for the inconsistency and disappointment this may bring. These days, Sha works as a performance artist, and though it's a shame that we'll never get to see her full wrestling potential realized, it's a great thing that she's living a happy and healthy life now. Ted DiBiase Jr. Ted DiBiase Jr. had all the tools for success when he made his main roster debut on May 26, 2008. It wasn't the fact that the second-gen star had won the World Tag Team title in his very first match, it was that Ted DiBiase displayed the same charisma and charm that got his father over in the 80s and 90s. DiBiase's most notable time was with Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton in Legacy, a dominant faction featuring second and third gen stars. But once Legacy disbanded in 2010, DiBiase slipped down the card despite his attempts at trying to get him over as a solo act. The former World Tag Team Champion even tried to recapture the $1 million gimmick that made his father famous, but that failed on all fronts because the company failed to give him something good creatively. Although Ted's career was on its last legs in 2013, it was still shocking when he was released from WWE. Like Sha, DiBiase was dealing with personal demons that forced him to step away from the spotlight. DiBiase revealed to Chris Van Vliet that he was wrestling with depression and anxiety, plus his commitment to being a family man was simply more important. Though he loved being a WWE star, he recounted his father working the WWE schedule and remembered all the missed birthdays and soccer games growing up. DiBiase didn't want to be that guy and turned down a lucrative 5-year contract. Now these days, the former World Tag Team Champion is in a very bad place. DiBiase was charged in 2023 with 1 count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud and theft concerning programs receiving federal funds, 6 counts of wire fraud, 2 counts of theft concerning programs receiving federal funds, and 4 counts of money laundering. His case is currently pending, and he could end up serving up to 35 years if he's found guilty. Snooker. Deuce and Domino was a fun act. A heel tag team with a classic greaser look was a nice hook for the gimmick, but only for the short term. When Sim aka Deuce made his debut on January 19, 2007, the gimmick was always on borrowed time because there was only so much you could do with the act. So it wasn't a surprise that the duo broke up over a year later after a decent tag team run, but Snooker's most memorable run is with Deuce and Domino because he didn't do anything as a single star. He immediately dropped the Deuce and Domino gimmick when he switched over to Raw, but jobbed to Santino Marella in his very first match as a solo act. It seemed that he was poised for something greater when Snooker joined Legacy, but once that story crashed and burned for him, then his career was dead. The final nail in the coffin was Snooker botching his spot in the Undertaker-Shawn Michaels match as a cameraman. Bruce Pritchard talked about Snooker on his Something to Wrestle podcast, and it boils down to Vince not seeing anything special in the second-gen star. Snooker wasn't given much of a chance to show what he could do as a singles act, but at the same time, his limited opportunities as a singles star were flat and forgettable. Lacy Von Eric. Lacy Von Eric would have been perfect for the Divas era, a blonde and attractive woman who couldn't wrestle her way out of a paper bag. But that isn't to say that Lacy couldn't get better over time, but the former WWE star didn't last long enough for the proper training. Lacy was only in FCW for 3 months before the company released her. It hasn't been confirmed why her stint in WWE was so short, but rumors have it that the WWE opted to give her the pink slip after she requested a transfer to Ohio Valley Wrestling. Whatever the case may be, her most notable time in wrestling was in TNA. She was brought in as a member of the Beautiful People and even won the TNA Knockouts Championship. To Lacy's credit, she was progressing as a performer, but her stint in the promotion only lasted a year. And Lacy Von Eric could have turned out to be the next Trish Stratus, but it didn't seem that her heart was into wrestling. She made a brief comeback behind the scenes as a co-owner of SCW Fury, but unfortunately, the promotion shut down in 2022. Gordy. As silly as the gimmick was, Jesse and Festus was a fun act. It stood out as something different on the main roster, and the Festus thing made for some genuinely great moments. However, it was clear that WWE saw Festus as the star, and their breakup sealed Jesse's fate. Creative tried to revive a gimmick that they had in Deep South Wrestling, Slam Master Jay, but the gangster act didn't work and it failed to get over on the main roster. Cena made his rapper gimmick work because he had charisma and a cool factor that Slam Master Jay was clearly missing. Given his size, it wasn't a surprise that Jesse was treated as a jobber. Ray was never given a chance to live up to his father's name, though to be fair, he never had a breakout moment like his partner Festus. Manu. The Anoa'i family has a rich history in WWE. Some of them have reached success like Afa Anoa'i, one of the members of the legendary Wild Samoans tag team. However, Afa's son did have a chunk of the success of his father's Hall of Fame career. Afa Anoa'i Jr. had a quick rundown in FCW, but that was the most successful part of his WWE career. He won the Florida Southern Heavyweight Championship only a year after his debut in Deep South Wrestling. He only kept it for 2 months and moved on to the main roster. But from the beginning, it was clear that Vince didn't see much in the second-gen star as Afa Anoa'i Jr. debuted as Mai Tai Anoa'i on Sunday Night Heat and lost to Jim Duggan. He was pulled from television a short time later due to failing the company's wellness policy. He then returned under the Manu name and his future seemed promising. Manu was in the early formation of the Legacy faction, but he only lasted 2 months before he was kicked out of the group. Manu was officially released on February 23, 2009. The consensus was that Manu was just not a good wrestler. His promo game was weak and his in-ring ability was basic and forgettable. Rumors have it that officials released Manu because of his physical appearance, which isn't too much of a shock since Vince loves big, sweaty and muscular men. David Flair. Now for every Charlotte, there's a David Flair. When you look at Flair's resume, it seems to be that the second-gen wrestler was another WCW star that WWE missed the boat on. However, most people who watched him in his WCW days agreed that the former US champion was terrible in the ring. WCW tried their hardest to push the kid beyond the mid-card, and he had several gimmick changes, with his most notable playing an unhinged psycho. When that failed to get over with the fans, they then tried to give him Stacy Keibler as a manager, and guess what? That flopped too. When WCW folded, WWE bought Flair's contract and sent him down to FCW, but the second-gen star barely lasted a year. He had one notable moment on television by wrestling The Undertaker during the Dead Man's feud against Ric Flair, but that was simply a squash match. If anybody just wants to realize how much faith they actually had in David Flair, just look at his Titantron. It's literally Ric Flair being disappointed followed by the words David Flair. But Flair just didn't have the chops to be a professional wrestler. He tried his luck again in TNA after he was released, but that stint came and went quickly like a fart in the wind. David may have not reached the success that his father insisted did in professional wrestling, but the retired star is living a nice and quiet life outside of the business. Jake Carter. Jake Carter is another case of a second-gen talent not being good enough to make it past developmental. Carter was the son of Vader, and he was even trained by the WWE Hall of Famer. But Carter never stood out in his time in FCW. He did win the FCW World Tag Team titles with Corey Graves, but all eyeballs were on Graves as he had charisma and a decent skill set. Now he was never terrible in the ring, but he had a limited moveset and looked like the default character from WWE's 2K games. Once he dropped the belt and disassociated himself with Graves, his career went downhill fast. Carter lasted in WWE longer than most names on this list, but his run in the company came to an end on September 12, 2013, following a long losing streak to rising WWE names on NXT. Wes Brisco. If you can't have a good match with Kurt Angle, then your chances in the wrestling business are very slim. But that brings us to Wes Brisco, who's infamous for his stint in the Aces and Eights faction. Of course, being a second-gen star means that WWE is going to take a chance with you first, and Wes Brisco signed a developmental deal in 2009 and even won the Florida Tag Team titles with Xavier Woods in 2010. But once the company was forced to vacate the belts a month later due to his injury, the company didn't see much value for Brisco on the main roster. Wes Brisco wasn't a bad wrestler as he could be carried to a decent match, but nothing stood out for him. He had an opportunity to make a splash in TNA, but he was easily the weakest link in the Aces and Eights faction. His promos were bad and his matches were forgettable. Brisco proved that he didn't belong in the main event scene, so it wasn't surprising that his career didn't go anywhere once the Aces and Eights angle was over. And Richie Steamboat. Richie Steamboat is a very sad case when the next-gen talent had loads of potential but couldn't live up to them because of injuries. WWE was high on Steamboat, but his momentum was always derailed because of an injury. But when Steamboat had the opportunity to show what he could do, he seemed to be a natural between the ropes. The former FCW heavyweight champion wasn't great on the mic, but he showed signs of charisma, and definitely some more time in developmental would have made him even better. Steamboat won the FCW heavyweight and tag team titles, and it seemed that his injury problems were well behind him. But unfortunately, Richie suffered a serious back injury that turned out to be the nail in the coffin of his career. His final match was against Cassius Ohno in NXT on November 21st, 2012. Although he's been quiet since his retirement in 2013, the former WWE star is happily living with his beautiful wife and kids. But it's a shame that Richie's career ended on a sour note, but it's a stark reminder of how dangerous the wrestling business can be. But there you have it folks, 10 failed WWE wrestlers from famous families. Be sure to leave your comments down below, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.